You settle into the couch tonight, the same way you did last night, and the night before that. The local news is on. Familiar anchor, familiar desk, familiar city skyline in the background. It feels permanent, it feels like it has always been there. It almost wasn't. In February 2022, a private equity firm called Standard General signed a deal to buy 64 local television stations in one transaction. 64 stations, markets from coast to coast. 1/3 of all American TV households. Watching news controlled by a single buyer. The price tag was $8.6 billion. You never heard about it. That is not an accident. This was not a story about cable giants or streaming wars. This was about the stations your parents trust for school closings, for weather emergencies, for local elections. The stations that feel local because they still say your city's name. The deal was announced, financing was arranged. Apollo Global Management committed $5.4 billion in debt to make it happen. The clock started ticking. Then something unusual happened, not in Washington. Not at the FCC, not at the Department of Justice. 8 states moved first. A coalition of state attorneys general, led by New York's Letitia James, filed a coordinated lawsuit in federal court on a single date in March 2023. 8 signatures, 1 filing within weeks. An $8.6 billion deal was dead. No federal vote, no congressional hearing. No FCC ruling. By the end of this video, you will know which legal document killed that deal. You will know what the breakup fee Tegna walked away with tells you about who really controls local news. And you will see why the answer is nothing like what you were told. Here is the obvious explanation. The federal government was supposed to handle this. When Standard General announced its $8.6 billion deal to acquire Tegna in February 2022, the Federal Communications Commission opened a formal review. That is exactly what the law requires. Any transfer of broadcast licenses, and Tegna held dozens of them, needs FCC approval. The system had a process. The process would run, case closed. Except the FCC's own analysis quietly told a different story. The agency's internal review found that the combined company would hold attributable interests in television stations serving more than 50% of U.S. television households, 50%. That figure came directly from the FCC's merger review docket filed in 2022. Then the Department of Justice weighed in. In September 2022, DOJ staff formally recommended the FCC deny the application outright. So the regulators saw the problem. The analysis was done, the recommendation was on paper. And then nothing. The FCC deadlocked, 2 commissioners in favor. 2 against, a 2-2 split along party lines. Chair Jessica Rosenworcel could not break the tie. The agency that exists specifically to govern broadcast licenses produced no ruling at all. That is not a close call. That is a complete institutional failure. The federal process consumed months of filings, hearings, and staff analysis. Apollo Global Management had already committed $5.4 billion in debt financing to fund the acquisition. The deal was capitalized, lawyered, and ready. But the official story cannot explain one thing. If the FCC deadlocked and the DOJ recommendation carried no binding authority, what actually stopped this merger? The answer did not come from Washington. On March 15, 2023, 8 state attorneys general walked into federal court together. New York, California, 7 others. 1 coordinated filing, 1 target. That target was the Tegna Standard General merger. New York Attorney General Letitia James put it directly in the press release her office issued that day. This merger would have been one of the largest media consolidations in recent history and would have given a single hedge fund control over dozens of local television stations across the country. That is not spin. That is the legal complaint, summarized in one sentence. But here is what made this lawsuit unusual. The states did not use broadcast law. They used standard antitrust doctrine, the same legal framework the DOJ uses to block grocery store mergers. The specific tool was the Herfindahl-Hirschman Index. The DOJ uses it to measure market concentration. A score above 500 in a market where the merger increases concentration by more than 200 points triggers a presumption of anti-competitive harm. In several overlapping local television advertising markets, the combined Tegna Standard General entity would have blown past that threshold. Local television advertising, not broadcast licenses. Not public interest standards, advertising markets. That is the lane the states chose, and it was a lane they had standing to enter without waiting for the FCC. So the states moved, the deal started dying. Here is the part that should stop you cold. The DOJ's own staff had recommended the FCC deny this merger back in September 2022. That was 6 months earlier. 4 federal agencies, 18 months of review. 1 staff recommendation to block it. And yet the deal was still alive in March 2023. Still breathing until 8 state attorneys general filed a single coordinated lawsuit. Why did the federal machinery stall while the states moved? Standard General walked away. January 2023, no courtroom battle. No dramatic ruling, no federal judge delivering a verdict. The company that had spent 18 months and hundreds of millions of dollars pursuing Tegna simply decided the fight was not worth finishing. But here is what that decision actually cost them. Buried inside the original merger agreement, the one signed in February 2022, was a termination clause. Standard General forfeited a breakup fee. The number was $136 million. Gone paid directly to Tegna. Not because a court ordered it. Because the contract demanded it the moment Standard General chose to walk. That is not a rounding error. That is the price of losing a negotiation you never formally lost. Think about what survived to reach this moment. 18 months of FCC review. 2 rounds of Senate scrutiny. A Department of Justice staff recommendation against the deal. The Biden administration openly signaling opposition to media consolidation of this scale. Standard General absorbed all of it. None of it killed the deal. 8 state attorneys general filing a coordinated lawsuit did. Not a federal vote, not a regulatory order. A credible threat of trial. 8 states, 1 courtroom, 1 target. And Standard General calculated the math and quit. The $136 million is the proof. You do not forfeit that kind of money unless the alternative is worse. Standard General looked at what 8 coordinated states were prepared to do in court and decided losing was the better outcome. Federal oversight generated 18 months of delay. State coordination generated a check. So if this kind of leverage exists, if 8 states can kill an $6 billion deal without a single federal vote, the question that should disturb you is a simple one. Why has it almost never been used before? Remember that couch, that local newscast. The anchor you have watched so many times you know their cadence by heart. That station exists in its current form because of a legal document most Americans will never read. A coordinated complaint filed by 8 state attorneys general on March 15, 2023. In U.S. District Court. Here is the payoff. Standard General walked away from the deal in May 2023. No trial, no federal vote. The company forfeited a termination fee that Tegna reported as $136 million. Kept outright, 8 states killed in $8.6 billion deal without a single federal regulator casting a deciding vote. The FCC's own docket analysis found the combined company would have held attributable interests in stations reaching more than 50% of U.S. television households. That document sat in a federal review process for over a year. For commissioners, partisan deadlock, nothing moved. The states moved instead. New York Attorney General Letitia James said it plainly in her May 2023 press release. One hedge fund would have controlled dozens of local television stations across the country. California's Rob Bonta stood beside her. 7 other states stood behind them both. What stopped a private equity firm with $5.4 billion in Apollo-backed debt financing was not a broadcast license ruling. Standard antitrust doctrine, applied at the state level, on a coordinated date, stopped them. Here is the concrete thing you can actually do. The Department of Justice measures local television advertising market concentration using Herfindahl-Hirschman index scores. Those scores are public records. Your market is in there. Search DOJ/HHI television market and your city name. The station on your screen tonight did not survive by accident. It survived because 8 attorneys general read a filing that 4 federal regulators could not act on and acted anyway. That $136 million is the price of local news in 2023. Subscribe for new breakdown like this every day.